Hello everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of Prismata. We're gonna get started here with a game against Derbados, who beat me last time. Soda bread? This is soda bread backwards. Is that on purpose? Like bread but without an A? Must be on purpose. Derbados sounds like a place, but it's not, I'm pretty sure. What the heck is this? Like... There's Big Soak, but like, it gets murdered by Tatsu. But Tatsu, I think, should lose to like just Vors. How does Vors do against like... I think just like Vors kind of does alright against everything, actually. You can get like a wall with your Ferret and Sack, and if you pick up a green, you have access to Fibroids, like you have Husks. There's some like good, cheapish defense, which is exactly what Vors need. The only like thing to consider is like, what about Drakes? I think Vors are fine against Drakes with this much support, and you can build a wall cheaply, which is like amazing. How is Vor against like something with it tries to go big econ and get a bunch of like green soak? I think it's fine just because there's no good absorbers, and like if your opponent does that, you can maybe try to stick a second Animus at some point and try to get a Tatsu or two. Like one Tatsu is just insane against an early field. Yeah, Animus here is reasonable. I'll take the obvious player 2 line though. Given that I think red is the way to go here. Anyway, that's why I think that if you think red is the way to go, this is the obvious opening. I don't know, I mean, you could try something higher econ for Tatsus, but I think with Vors you'll lose. And opponent's not doing that, right? They didn't get a third NG. They'll probably just go DDA. Maybe AC? Okay. I really want this Ferret and Sack. And I'm not sure about this Tarsier, like, should it be a Vor? I don't want to have to build a Rhino as my defender, but I kind of will. To get something that doesn't require me to keep NGs to attack with it. Well... if I build a Vor, they have to build a Rhino, which is like kind of nice for me. Well, no, they can build a Ferritin, or this guy, Fibroid. And I'll just hold the Vor against that, obviously, but then I can follow up with like another Tarsier or 2. I think a Tarsier is better because I can actually get some attack in this way. If I build the Vor, I'm like following up with Tarsiers and then I'm still not attacking. This way I build Tarsier and then like Rhino Vor and like at least I do a little damage. Or something like that anyway. No, I don't have to do that. Go in for 3 and get some green. Seems pretty alright, actually. I have a wall next turn, and I gain access to Fibroids whenever I want them. I might not have enough tech or econ for all this, huh? Yeah, I think it's a well, 13 is like wall and 2 red things. But I'm gonna need some NGs as well, so maybe just a drone is better. And then I can like wall, Tarsier Vor, NG. But then I never get the green, right? Maybe the green is fine here, and I can just have one of the red things be a fibroid. Seems all right, I guess. Yeah, so opponent will definitely be attacking. It's not like they have some way to exploit wall effectively now that they're up to 3 attack. So I get the wall, and that's fine. Like, I lose an NG, I replace the NG, and I get another one of these. I think that's fine. I could get a fibroid, I suppose, instead of this Tarsier. But it's basically just like do 2 damage, right? Do I want that exactly? Fibroid is better when it has the threat of doing one of 2 things. Right, using it as soak or using it as attack. This way I can save up and I can like build in a Nervy instead at some point, which might be pretty cool. Yeah. Like, I don't know why I don't. It's not. I'm not trying to say that I always win them, but I feel pretty at home in these like low econ red/4 games, right? Like, I don't think I'm a genius at these, but I somehow feel like I do reasonably well most of the time the game gets into this kind of shape. It's easy to say here, especially because I'm player 2, which I think is a better side to be here, but I feel like I will probably do fairly well. Even, I don't know. There's no such thing as fairly well, right? You either win or lose, but I hope not. I don't think I'll make that many blunders. Let's maybe be a little bit less generous. Seems great. Third Vor is a little ambitious, but I should be okay. And it's really important to put on pressure. I mean, it's a 3 health force field, right? But it's a 3 health non-prompt force field in a way, so I don't know if that's really worth it. Because, like, they're going to absorb this onto wall. If you force field, then... Oh, actually, no, it doesn't work. Yeah, this extra attack that I added makes the force field no good. Okay, so they're attacking for 4. I don't think I want to click this. Like, I don't need a wall right now. This is actually pretty comfortable. Like, I now threaten to attack with this or to soak with it. And in either case, I still have all my Vores online. Right? But maybe I should just, like, plan to soak with it. In which case, what else would I do? I can't do much with this, right? Like, I could build a wall, but I don't want it. So what if I didn't build this at all? What could I do? Well, I kind of need 2 NGs. And I could get 2 Tarsiers, but that's like, why do I want that? That sucks. I think the best line involves a Fibroid. Given that I'm getting it, I guess I could get NG Tarsier. No, I can't do that. Well, I don't need the NG exactly. They don't really threaten to attack for only 3. I mean, I don't know. This gives them a free Electivore hold, but I don't think they really want that, do they? Maybe. But if they only attack me for 3 next turn, like I'm pretty okay with that. Well, they'd be holding it to Gambit against me. No, I think this is alright. I could Force Field to, like, guarantee I can do what I want. No, I can't. That doesn't help. This Tarsier sucks. Let's just get another of these guys, right? Yeah, and now I threaten to attack with everything, including the Fibroid and all the Vores, if I want. They are perfectly granular here, so it's not like I can do anything weird. Like, when it's just Aegis and a single wall and 2 NGs, you can attack for 5 and they're like really sad. But this Rhino handles that fine. They would just lose Rhino NG. I forgot Aegis was in the set, to be honest. I was just looking at Energy. Interesting. So against this, they want to lose the Enervy for sure, or the Fibroid for sure, and save the 2 NGs. Is there some way I can make that awkward, like letting them keep 3 health alive instead of 2, while not like wasting my time? Is there something I can do that involves that? Right, because this way, if they keep both NGs, they can't keep anything else. And I get, like, this gives me the defensive tempo is what I get out of this, right? I can hold my splitter back sort of for free because they want to keep all the NGs alive. And then they're being exploited. The attack does nothing if they want that. I thought I might sneak in a drone there. It's probably a bit much. This should be a Vor, shouldn't it? Like, I'm keeping at least 2 NGs this way. Probably 2 NGs and a Fibroid. And then I get to build 2 more. And this goes for everything. I think that's alright. Interesting. Turning off a Vor, huh? Yeah, that's why I held the splitter. See, that splitter didn't even have to attack. I got to hold him. And it's as if he had attacked. Cool. Alright. I told you I'm good at these Electivore games. I always think it's kind of cool, like, I know it shouldn't be a huge surprise, but like... Really? When I looked, both of us had 12 drones. Apparently, what were we both doing with drones here? Ah, it was showing up as spiky because we were clicking ferritins on alternate turns. But we both had, like... We both built up to 12 drones as fast as possible and both stopped exactly there, right? I don't know. Like, there's just sort of a pleasing... Not exactly symmetry, but... Like a feeling of shared something, of like, yeah. Neither of us... Like, what is it about this set that makes us both say exactly 12 drones is the right number? Like, there's a lot of granularity around 12. Like, how could 13 be so different, right? And I didn't, like, pick 12. I just kind of built stuff until it felt right to stop building. And go for attackers. And my opponent did the same thing, and we both landed on exactly 12 and decided, like, nope, don't need any more ever again. How does this happen? I don't know. Prismata is a cool game. So... Well, actually, not as fast as possible, right? Opponent cut to get this conduit. And I guess I cut to get my animus, right? Sort of. And then... So we each took a break turn of, like, getting fewer than 2 drones. I got 1, he got 0. But then we got 12. So what happened? Like, it feels like in the opening, my opponent was just already dead. Like, as soon as we get to the point where I'm attacking for 3... I have, like, 3 permanent attackers. Okay, well, actually here, I think opponent's Tarsier was not good. Vor would have been a lot better here, right? You built this Vor... Like, the reason to not build a Vor here and build a Tarsier instead is basically... There's a couple. When you're choosing whether to build Tarsier or Electivore, there's a few reasons you... Well, you would generally prefer Electivore, supposing that you could click it forever, right? Clearly, it's just way better. And so the question is, when is it okay to build a Tarsier instead? When is it better to do that? Reason 1, that is pretty clear, is like if the Electivore's damage you think would not be impactful on the next turn, would do like nothing, and even on this turn, like I was thinking of an Electivore. I know opponent can build a Rhino to absorb the damage, and then the Electivore does nothing. But even making them build a Rhino is like enough impact that a Vor is reasonable, I think. Making them build something they don't want to build. So that's one reason you might prefer Tarsier. And the other is if you don't think you can click the Vor regularly, reliably. I mean, there's sort of a third, which is like if you want the Electivore to attack and then become Soak. But that's usually pretty desperate, and sort of falls into the same category as, well, why is it you need to Soak with Electivore? It must be because you don't have enough engineers to defend. So that's sort of like a subset of not being able to click it forever. Anyway, I don't know. I was somehow worried that, like, on this turn, opponent would build 2 Vors, and I'd have to, like, Rhino Vor or something. But actually, it's really important for them to get the Ferret and Sack, so I shouldn't have been so worried about that. And likewise, they could have built a Fibroid, but it kind of sucks when they don't have any other attack behind it. So you kind of want the Ferret and Sack. And to be honest, a Vor here kind of feels alright instead of the Tarsier. It's not going to attack for anything, but it'll make me build a Rhino, whereas what I clearly want to do this turn is double Vor. And a Rhino is worse than that, right? Rhino Vor is a lot more problematic for me. I couldn't get this Conduit, for example. I'd have to, like, drone or something, or maybe float, or buy NG, I don't know. And then I'd have a Rhino instead of a Vor as well, like, even worse. So, just picking up a Vor, even though you think it's going to get absorbed, like, that can be fine sometimes. Okay, anyway, moving on from this. I think this turn is great. The Conduit is sort of questionable, I talked about during the game. You could argue for drone here. But I think Fibroid is such a good tool to have in your pocket, and likewise Enervy, that... Right, and it's also like something cheap to do with your red on turns where you want to spend a Ferret and Sack. I don't know, like Husk is cheaper, but this is like more impactful than Husk. Right, it's sort of like... Well, never mind. It's a bit like letting you buy 2 Husks and something else red. Except you spend, like, a green for one of the reds, right? And, like, it's better than that, too, because it threatens to attack. But that's, like, you know, the Conduit is sort of fine. It lets you buy cheap things when you need to spend money on other stuff. And the threat really does... Like, the threat of Fibroid is pretty serious. Especially in a Vor game where you have, like, kind of weird, flexible threat stuff. I guess the other big advantage I had was, like, I got my wall before opponent was attacking, and they didn't get theirs before I could attack, so they had to absorb on Rhino for a turn. That's just, like, the advantage of getting the first Animus. It's sort of hard to do anything about that as player 1, I think. Yeah, I don't know. It feels like player 1 should be in very bad shape against Fastimus here. But I'm not sure what they're supposed to do about it. Higher econ blue-green just does not look working. And... I don't know. I think actually the biggest problem was opponent got this Conduit. I think the Conduit was wrong. Green is good, but you needed more econ, I think, to support all this. I mean, I don't know. I stopped at 12 drones too. But if we're at the same econ level and I have a head start on attack and on defense because, like, I get the first Ferret and Sack, and we have the same tech, I don't, like, see how you're gonna win. So, well, I don't know. You shouldn't really judge things by, like, who got first X, because getting first X is not always better than getting it after. So maybe this was a slightly higher econ set where you could, like, play with an actual Blast Forge and just, like, spend your red cheaply on Husks on occasion, like... Just pretend you have a single like a single red per turn by, like, buying Husk instead of NG. And obviously, like, just buying Husk instead of NG is, like, bad. But if you can use the promptness of Husk, you can't actually though with Vors, like, because you can always lose NG, buy NG, and that's, like, about the same as buying Husk. So Husk is actually pretty bad here. I didn't think about that. It feels like good support for red, but when Electivore is in the set, you don't really need Husk. Generally. Because you tend to have enough... You can like gambit your engineers and rebuy them. That's kind of a way in which Electivores are better than Splitters. Like, normally you think of... Like, Electivore plus Engineer. Is that better or worse than Splitter? It costs 6 red instead of 6 green, so like that's better. It attacks for 1. When you absorb with it, obviously Splitter is much better. But when you soak with it, like Electivore is better because you can soak with 1 of it and then later soak with 2 more of it. Like, right? You can soak with 1 while attacking. And then if you want, you can sack the rest. So Electivore plus Engie kind of gives you defensive tempo. It allows you to buy non-prompt engineers to defend instead of like husks or equivalent units. Very interesting. So I don't know, maybe the higher econ thing isn't so great because Husk is no good and there's not much else to spend your red on. I don't know, Fibroid. But I think it's like game over at this point. Like I'm by the time I've gotten the 5th attacker and like another Tarsier on the way, an opponent is like, after their turn, they've got 4 and a Tarsier on the way. It just doesn't seem very good. This was a complicated turn. This was my longest turn by far, if you look down here. I'm trying to figure out what, like, how to preserve as many threats as I can. Let's look again at some of the things I considered here. So this is like a relatively clear play, I think. Like, it's not complicated. You just say, well, I want another Vor. I want a Fibroid to keep my Engies alive. And actually, I have enough Engies that I can threaten to soak with Engies and still attack with all the Vores and the Fibroid. I think this would be an okay turn. The downside is that like you're not doing anything with your blue. And you could continue floating it, but wouldn't it be better if you could actually use it? Like a Fibroid, or a Ferret and Sack with like build time of 3 is not that great. You should be reinvesting this as soon as you can in something good. So I tried this, but couldn't really find anything else to do with the $4 left over. Like if I guaranteed absorb on Fibroid, then opponent doesn't have as much to worry about, right? The Fibroid is not an attacker, it's only soak. And they can even exploit me by attacking for less. So like, okay, I can build 2 Engies and then I attack, but that's the earlier turn, so it's like an option. You could like just build 2 Tarsiers and replace the Engies you're losing. Like, I don't think this is actually the worst thing in the world. But we're sort of past the point in the game where you want to build Tarsiers, so if you can find anything else to do, like, that's better. I didn't think about building Rhinos, actually. Maybe that would have been an interesting play. But, like, with Fibroid and Electivore in the set, there's got to be something better than building a Rhino. Maybe, like, Rhino, Fibroid, Engie would have been okay. Spends the same amount of gold as this, but puts 3 more threat on the table, and spends a green. I don't know. And I eventually came up with like, well, wait a minute. I have this blue. I don't want to buy a wall, but what if I could buy a splitter? What would I buy with a splitter? Yeah. And I realized at some point that buying 2 more Engies is just sort of good. Because it means the Fibroid threat is real. right? Like a Tarsier here is like 1 attack per turn, 2 turns from now. 2 Engies is like 2 health or 2 damage, up to me which one, next turn. And that's pretty great. Once you're like over the absorb barrier and both players are like just scrabbling to get as much as they can, stuff that comes next turn, getting 2 times as much stuff in half as many turns is like insane, right? So these Engies are great. And I was pleased to find the exploit here. Right, think about how your opponent wants to defend. They really want to keep the 2 Engies alive. But if they do that, they don't have... Right, if they're... Like, if I attack for everything, they keep the 2 Engies alive, and that's exactly what they want, right? So, how can you change things? By attacking for less, of course. Is that going to be useful? Well, if you imagine these 2 Engies are out of the picture, and so is 2 of my attack, then they have 10 defense. Actually, 2 of my attack is not gone, because they're not losing the Engies, right? They have 10 defense, because the Engies are not actually defenders. And I have 9 attack, and this is what they're defending with. And I think against that, pretty much every player would find... Well, I'm sure there are plenty of players who wouldn't find it, but like... Experienced players would find the splitter hold here. If it's just these units. It's like a guaranteed free splitter hold, no downsides. In the actual game, there was a downside, which is that if they wanted, they could choose to like keep Fibroid Engie alive. But that's giving up a Vor click. Right, it gives up 1 damage in exchange for... What? So in the actual line, what they had alive was was a wall and 2 Engies lived, right? That's 5 health. And then they attacked with a Vor. If they had chosen to keep Engie Rhino alive, then what they would have would be 3 health, plus the wall, of course. They'd have 6 health. Or Engie Fibroid, well, I don't know, they get to choose. So they could either keep 1 more health alive and deal 1 less damage, which is sort of like break even, but not all that great actually. Or they could keep 1 less health alive if they choose to keep the Fibroid and an Engie. That's like keeping 1 health instead of 2, but do 1 more damage? So none of those are actually like, compared to just keeping the 2 Engies and losing everything, you can gain a health and lose a damage, or you can lose a health or lose it. Yeah, you can gain a health or a damage and lose the other. And those all sort of like break even, and so it's kind of a bit weird to give my opponent the choice of all 3 of those. Which would you rather have? Certainly they're better off than if I didn't give them a choice and said you must keep the 2 Engies. But in exchange, I get the tempo to hold my splitter. I get to make this play, right? Build another Vor. And, you know, opponent... And the Fibroid is still threatening. If I want to attack that I can, but I don't have to. Well, I kind of actually have to if they attack for 6, right? Because I don't want to lose Fibroid, Engie. So, but okay, I get this fibroid. And I get to build a Vor. Right, I get to keep adding more stuff by holding the splitter back. And the splitter doesn't cost any actual value, it just lets my opponent choose what kind of value they want. Whereas in exchange, I get actual stuff. I get time. So, like, be on the lookout for exploits. Even when your opponent is, like, on paper fully granular, there may be some units that they're less willing to lose than others. Even in games where, like, the engineers don't do something, you should usually try to make your opponent lose as much granularity as possible. But especially if there's units that are defending but that actually do something, try imagining those units are gone and see if you could find an exploit against what remains. You know, if it's... And that's not always, like, the right play to make, but it's a play to think about. Maybe your opponent can just say, fine, I don't mind so much losing that thing. Thank you for doing less damage. That certainly can be right sometimes. But it's good to be on the lookout for these opportunities. Okay, well, I'm glad to get my my comeuppance. No, comeuppance is the opposite. Me getting my comeuppance would be someone else showing me up, wouldn't it? I'm not sure. Let's look that up real quick. How do you say comeuppance? Comeuppance. A punishment or fate that someone deserves. Yeah. So maybe I just mean my comeback. I'm happy to equalize against this person anyway. Alright. Well, we're done. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.